In this video, we will be going over how to construct X and R control charts. Here we have our 6 steps that we are going to use to set up these control charts. And really where most of the work is within steps 4 and 5. There are several formulas that we need to be aware of that we can use to get our control limits. And we will get those control limits for the X charts, X control charts, as well as the R charts. And we'll be doing that process again to get these revised control limits. But before we get those control limits for the trial control limits and the revised control limits, we will be looking at these central lines. Okay? So what we're going to end up with is some sort of control chart that looks like this. The first step is to get a trial control chart, and what we'll do with that is we will revise that control chart. The goal is to set up these control charts so that these control limits give us a level of certainty that any dot that falls outside of the control limit has an assignable cause. After we're finished revising the control limits, most likely they will be scrunched up and down. And the central line, once it's revised, will be a different than what we got with the trial central line. Let's use this set of data to construct X charts and R charts. As you can see, the first 3 steps for constructing control charts were already accomplished for us. Someone already selected quality characteristics, chose some sort of subgroup. In this case, each subgroup has 6 observations, and that person was also nice enough to collect all of the data, and with each of these subgroups of 6 data, they not only calculated the X bar, which is the average of those 6 observations, but they also calculated the range of the data in that subgroup. For example, subgroup number 1 had 6 observations. The average of those 6 was this X bar of 20.35, and the range of those values, the difference between the highest value and the lowest value, was 0.34. The first thing that I'm going to do is calculate the trial central lines. I'm going to calculate one for the X and one for the R. To calculate the trial central line for X, which is X double bar, imagine an X with 2 bars above here, I'm going to take the sum of all of these X bars, B2 through B26, and divide that by G. What is G? G is the number of subgroups that we have. Done. The line running through all of these data is going to be 20.4004. Going to use a very similar process to calculate the R bar. Going to take the sum of all of these data, and I'm going to divide that by 25. Okay, check, check. Got 2 pieces of data so far. Now, to calculate these upper and lower control limits, let's just look at X for a while. In a perfect world, we would want these data to be within 3 standard deviations of the population from that X double bar that we just calculated. And now that we're talking standard deviations, we should differentiate standard deviations of a population, which is sigma, versus 3 standard deviations from a population, which is S. We don't have the standard deviation of the population, which would be sigma. That's what we want. We want roughly these control limits to be within 3 standard deviations of the population from the central line, but we don't have it. So what do? We're going to use a constant that we can look up in the back of the book. And in this case, that constant's value is 0.483. I went to the back of the book and looked up in the first column, it asked me how many observations were in each subgroup, and there were 6. And I went over to the column that had A2 in it and found 0.483. So now I'm ready to calculate the central lines for the X-bar chart as the addition of this X double bar plus this constant times this R bar value that we just calculated. Check, just got the upper central limit. Now I'm going to use the same process for the lower control limit, except I'm going to subtract this term. Check, check. Now I have successfully established a trial control chart for the X chart. Now let's finish this by calculating the control limits for the R bar chart, and then we'll be complete with step number 4 of constructing a control chart. We have for the upper central line D4, which is a constant from the back of the book. In this case is 2.004, corresponding to 6 observations in each subgroup. And the D3 constant is 0. Also got this from the back of the book. So for the upper central limit for the R chart, very simply, I'm going to multiply this R bar value times 2.004 D4. And I'm going to do the same to get the lower central limit for the R bar chart. Equals D3 times 0.3556, which is 0. So check, 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 check. These are the 6 values that I need to construct. Now I have successfully constructed a trial control line or control chart for both the X bar chart and the R chart. Now I'm getting pretty excited because I can make this control chart visually. What I'm going to do is create new columns where I can put all of these values that we just calculated. X double bar, let's put the control limits for that X chart. We have the lower control limit, X. Okay, now I'm going to put this value in here, going to put this value in here, going to put the lower control limit value in here, and let's just go ahead and do the same thing for the R chart. We have R bar, UCL, R, LCL, R. Okay, just going to drag this down. Okay, now we have all that data. Now I'm going to construct a line. Want the marked line chart. It's going to automatically populate all of this. I don't want that. I want to start all over. I'm going to remove all of these. Okay. Now, let's add our actual data first. Our Y values are right here. Let's do the X bar chart first. Okay, the X-axis is subgroup. Okay, we're getting there. Now I want to add let's do the X double bar. Okay, got that. Put in subgroup. We're getting there. And so on for the control limits. Aha! So here is my trial control chart for the X bar chart. Done. With a little bit of formatting, I want to take all of these points off and just make them simple lines. What I can create is something that looks like this. Beautiful. Got my actual data in here. Got my X double bar line. Got my upper control limit line. Got my lower control limit line. Done. And I could do the same thing to construct the R chart. Okay, we're done with step number 4 of constructing histograms for both X bar charts and R charts. Let's move on to step number 5. We need to revise these control lines, these control limits, and these central lines. Okay? Okay, so now let's proceed to step number 5. I've set it up over here. What do you see when you look at these two charts? The first thing I see with the X chart is that this 4th and 5th values, both of them are sticking out. With our chart, this 18th value up here sticking out. So let's just take it one by one. Let's look at the X chart first. What we're going to do, we're going to X out this point and this point, because we don't want that assignable cause that we know exactly what's causing those values to be above and below those control limits. We're going to just take them out. So let's go over here. I copied all of the data. There was a 0.73 in here. I'm going to take out the 4th and 5th data points on the X chart, and I'm going to take out this 0.73 value, the 18th value, on the R chart. So now I'm going to take the sum of all of these values, which now has the 4th and 5th values removed, divided by, since we took 2 out, we have 23 values in there. Now we have our revised X double var value. Do the same thing with R. Sum of those divided by 24, because we only took 1 value out. Okay, check, check. Got those 2 values. Now we have a new formula. The formula was different when we were looking over here. I accidentally typed over it. But just focus on these formulas. We now have this X double bar new value. That's the one right here. Now we need to look up a new constant, A. I put it in over here, 1.225. And we need this sigma value. We don't have sigma. Again, sigma is the standard deviation of a population. We only have a sample. So we have a formula over here. I typed it. To get that sigma value, all we do is look at this R new value, which is 0.34, and divide by this D2 constant that I looked up in the back of the book in the table, 2.534. So I'm going to take this value, P4, divided by this constant. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to calculate the upper control limit, and take this value, this value, plus, this A value here times D2. I'm all over the place. Times this sigma value. Okay, we do the same thing here. P3 minus the sigma value times A. Okay, got it. Check, 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 check. We just have 2 more checks to make. And we had a different formula over here earlier. I accidentally typed over it. But now we have a different formula for the control limits on the R bar chart. This time it's D2 times sigma, D1 times sigma. I looked these values up. I'm going to copy and paste over here. Okay, so real straightforward. Equals D2 times sigma is over here, equals D1 times sigma's over here. Check, check. Done. Now we got all of our values. We're just about there. We're on the home stretch. Just need to make these revised control charts. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this value over here. Going to look for the upper control limit, lower control limit. The R bars right here, upper and lower. Okay, gonna take this, drag it across so that I can drag them down. Got it. Okay, now let's get these guys. Just gonna copy the X chart over here so that I can revise the selections. What did I revise? I revised the x double bar, so I have some different y values now. Hope that my computer gives me some love. I think it was this column. Gonna drag all the way up. Whoops, that was the wrong one. Gonna delete. Got it. What else did I revise? I revised the upper control limit. Okay. Here we go. Revise the lower control limit. Okay. Now let's just make sure that the X bar, the raw values, are selected appropriately. There we go. There is our revised X chart. Done. We only have one more thing to do. Let's get this trial R chart, put it over here. Jeez, my computer's all over the place. I don't know why this chart got stretched out, but it's still correct. Once we revise all of these values, let's hope that it's this one. Where did our revised R values go? Here they are. Okay. This is the revised actual data. We revised the upper control limit. I'm going to select all 25 of these. Same thing with the lower control limit. And our revised R bar, 0.34. Now we are done with both. Well, I don't know why these lines are not popping up, but we're done with that one, and I want to show you if we were to put this revised X-bar chart next to the trial X-bar chart, what you would see was this red line actually moved down a little bit and it was visible, and this green line moved up a little bit. So there you have it. Those are the steps to construct a trial control chart and a revised control chart. We're done.